Welcome to the channel. Today, we're exploring four of the most valuable and ultra-rare United States Susan B. Anthony dollars. From rare varieties to exceptional high-grade coins, these fascinating dollars could be worth far more than their face value. Stay tuned to discover their history, rarity, and incredible market value. Let's get started. First up, we're talking about one of the most rare and valuable, the 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollar with the Philadelphia P mint mark, is one of the most fascinating and closely watched $1 coins in modern United States numismatics. It may appear to be nothing more than an ordinary large dollar from the late 1970s, but beneath that familiar surface is a remarkable story of American history, changing currency, and collector discovery. For enthusiasts, the 1979 P is especially captivating because it represents the very beginning of the Susan B. Anthony dollar series, while certain varieties and exceptionally preserved examples can command dramatically higher prices than ordinary circulated pieces. The coin's combination of historical importance, recognizable design, and the possibility of discovering a valuable variety continues to make it a prized treasure among collectors. The story begins in 1979, when the United States introduced the Susan B. Anthony dollar as the nation's first small-size circulating dollar coin. The new denomination was created in an effort to provide a convenient alternative to paper dollar notes and reduce the cost associated with replacing them. The coin honored Susan B. Anthony, the pioneering American women's suffrage leader whose activism became an important part of the nation's social and political history. Production took place at the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints, with the Philadelphia issue carrying the distinctive P mint mark. The 1979 P, therefore, stands at the opening chapter of a completely new coin series and connects everyday American commerce with the long struggle for voting rights and greater equality. At a time when the United States was dealing with inflation, changing consumer habits, and a rapidly evolving economy, this unusual new dollar entered circulation, carrying the portrait of a woman whose name had become permanently connected with American reform. Artistically, the 1979 P Susan B. Anthony dollar is immediately recognizable. The obverse features a portrait of Susan B. Anthony facing right, surrounded by the inscriptions "Liberty," "In God We Trust," and the date 1979, with the P mint mark appearing near the lower portion of the design. The portrait was created by chief engraver Frank Gasparo, while the reverse presents the famous Apollo 11-inspired eagle design, showing an eagle landing on the moon with an olive branch in its talons, surrounded by stars and the inscriptions United States of America, $1, and EPLUBUS UNUM. The coin is composed of copper nickel clad over copper core, measures about 26.5 millimeters across, and weighs approximately 8.1 grams. Its smaller diameter compared with earlier silver dollars was intended to make it easier to handle, while its distinctive 11-sided inner rim gave the coin a unique visual identity. In brilliant uncirculated condition, the surfaces can display attractive luster and sharply defined details that make a pristine example especially appealing. The real excitement surrounding the 1979 P begins when rarity and condition enter the story. The Philadelphia Mint struck more than 360 million Susan B. Anthony dollars in 1979, so an ordinary circulated example is not considered rare. However, not every 1979 P is equal. One of the most famous varieties from the first year is the 1979 P wide rim, also known as the near-date variety, where the date appears noticeably closer to the rim than on the common narrow rim or far-date version. This variety resulted from a different obverse hub and is one of the first features collectors examine when searching through 1979 P dollars. Condition is equally important. Circulated coins showing scratches, discoloration, dull surfaces, or heavy wear generally have modest value, while sharply struck, lustrous coins graded at the upper mint state levels become substantially more desirable. The combination of a scarce variety and exceptional preservation is where the truly fascinating values begin. When it comes to worth, the ordinary 1979 P Susan B. Anthony dollar is usually far less valuable than sensational headlines suggest, but exceptional coins can tell a very different story. Common circulated pieces generally trade close to face value, while attractive uncirculated examples can bring premiums depending on grade. High-grade certified coins, particularly those reaching the finest levels, can sell for hundreds or potentially several $1,000s when rarity, grade, eye appeal, and auction demand come together. For a genuinely exceptional 1979p variety or top-condition specimen, a broad high-end market range of roughly $1,000 to $8,000 can be conceivable, but such figures should be reserved for extraordinary coins rather than ordinary examples. The highest prices are driven primarily by certified grade, recognized variety, strike quality, preservation, and competitive collector demand, not simply by the fact that the coin carries a 1979 date and a P mint mark. This distinction is crucial because it separates a normal old dollar from a genuinely important numismatic discovery. For collectors searching for a valuable 1979p, the first step is careful examination rather than assuming every coin is rare. The date area should be studied closely to determine whether the coin displays the wide rim or near-date variety, and the surfaces should be inspected under good lighting for marks, abrasions, weak strikes, discoloration, and original mint luster. A coin that appears exceptionally clean and sharp may deserve professional certification, especially if it seems to possess a recognized variety or unusually high-grade preservation. Protective holders should be used to prevent additional contact damage, and unnecessary cleaning should always be avoided because cleaning can severely reduce collector appeal. The 1979p Susan B. Anthony dollar is far more than an old $1 coin. It is a tangible connection to the history of American women's suffrage, a landmark in the evolution of United States coinage, and the opening chapter of a dollar series that remains deeply fascinating to numismatists. Its portrait, Apollo 11-inspired reverse, distinctive size, and famous 1979 varieties give it an identity unlike almost any other modern United States dollar. While most examples are not worth thousands, the finest certified coins and desirable varieties can become prized treasures when rarity, condition, and collector demand converge. That is what keeps enthusiasts searching through old collections, inherited coin jars, dealer inventories, and forgotten drawers. The possibility that an apparently ordinary 1979p could contain something extraordinary. For collectors worldwide, the Susan B. Anthony dollar remains a captivating blend of history, artistry, rarity, and discovery, and the finest examples continue to hold a special place in the story of United States numismatics. And secondly, imagine finding a scratched and naturally toned Susan B. Anthony dollar from 1980 with a small D mint mark, a coin that appears worn, ordinary, and almost forgotten. There may seem to be nothing extraordinary about it, but in the world of United States numismatics, appearance alone does not tell the entire story. The 1980 D Susan B. Anthony dollar belongs to the second year of a fascinating modern dollar series, and although most examples are common, unusual varieties, exceptional errors, and remarkably preserved survivors, can transform an ordinary-looking coin into a serious collector piece. The real question is not simply whether this dollar is old, but whether something unusual happened when its dies were manufactured, when the coin was struck, or during the decades it spent in circulation. For collectors searching through old collections, inherited change, and dealer inventories, that possibility is what makes the 1980 D issue so captivating. To understand the coin, the story has to return to the United States of 1980. The country was experiencing a period of economic uncertainty, high inflation, changing interest rates, and major political and cultural developments. The Susan B. Anthony dollar had been introduced only a year earlier as an attempt to create a smaller, more convenient dollar coin that could eventually reduce dependence on $1 paper notes. The coin honored Susan B. Anthony, an important figure in the American women's suffrage movement, making the denomination historically significant beyond its monetary purpose. The series was designed by Frank Gasparo, the chief engraver of the United States Mint. whose work gave the coin its distinctive appearance. In 1980, the Denver Mint struck millions of these dollars, placing the D Mint mark on examples produced there. Although the dollar did not achieve the widespread public popularity officials had hoped for, it became an enduring subject of numismatic interest because of its unusual size, historical subject, and numerous varieties and condition challenges. The design itself makes the Susan B. Anthony dollar instantly recognizable. On the obverse, Gasparo's portrait of Susan B. Anthony faces right, surrounded by liberty, in God we trust, and the date 1980, with the Denver D Mint mark appearing near the lower portion of the design. The reverse carries a dramatic eagle landing on the moon, surrounded by stars, and the inscriptions United States of America, $1, and EPLUBUS UNUM. The reverse design was adapted from the emblematic artwork associated with the Apollo 11 mission and had previously appeared on the Eisenhower dollar. The coin is made of copper-nickel clad over copper core, weighs approximately 8.1 grams, and measures about 26.5 millimeters in diameter. On a high-grade specimen, the original mint luster can be striking, while a circulated example such as the scratched and toned coin examined here may show a mixture of contact marks, muted surfaces, and coloration developed through decades of storage and handling. Those imperfections matter enormously when determining grade and market value. The Denver Mint produced approximately 33.6 million Susan B. Anthony dollars in 1980, a substantial figure that immediately explains why an ordinary 1980 D is not considered an ultra-rare coin simply because of its date and mint mark. This is where one of the most important lessons in coin collecting begins. Mintage is not the same thing as rarity. Millions can be struck, yet only a small number may survive in exceptional condition, with an unusual die characteristic, a dramatic mint error, or a particularly desirable combination of grade and variety. Conversely, a coin with a lower mintage can still be relatively easy to locate if large numbers survived. For the 1980 D issue, survival rate, strike quality, surface preservation, and collector demand all influence scarcity. Many examples entered circulation and accumulated scratches, bag marks, dullness, and environmental tunning. Finding one with exceptionally clean surfaces, strong details, original luster, and a high certified grade is considerably more difficult than simply finding a 1980 D dollar. Varieties and minting errors are where the search becomes especially interesting, but caution is essential because not every unusual-looking mark represents a recognized major variety. Collectors examine Susan B. Anthony dollars for double die characteristics, die cracks, repunched or unusual mint mark features, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, broad strikes, and other genuine production errors. The famous 1979 Susan B. Anthony series is particularly known for its wide rim and narrow rim date varieties, but that distinction should not automatically be transferred to every later date. On a 1980 D, the strongest premiums generally come from a genuinely recognized variety or a dramatic, authenticated mint error rather than from ordinary differences in date appearance. Minting errors can occur at several stages. A working die may receive unintended doubling during hubbing, a planchet may be improperly positioned during striking, a die can develop cracks after repeated stress, or other mechanical failures can create spectacular deviations. Because mint marks were still applied individually at the mint during this era, unusual mint mark characteristics can also attract specialist attention. However, authentication is critical, since post-mint damage can imitate many of these features. Now consider the specific coin described here, scratched and toned. That condition immediately creates an important distinction between collector interest and extraordinary value. Scratches generally reduce desirability because they damage the original surface and can prevent a coin from receiving a high numerical grade. Tunning, however, is more complicated. Natural tunning, acquired gradually through storage, can sometimes be attractive and may preserve evidence of originality, while harsh cleaning, artificial coloration, or chemical treatment can seriously diminish collector appeal. A coin should never be cleaned in an attempt to make it look newer. Professional grading services evaluate factors such as wear, surface preservation, strike, luster, color, and originality, and certification can become particularly important when a potentially valuable variety or error is involved. A scratched and toned 1980D in ordinary circulated condition would generally command only a modest premium, often around face value to a few dollars depending on grade and market demand. Fine and very fine examples may remain in the low dollar range, while attractive about uncirculated pieces can bring several dollars, and certified mint state coins can reach higher levels depending heavily on grade. The possibility of substantially greater value appears when a 1980D combines exceptional preservation with a legitimate variety or major mint error. An ordinary circulated example should not be confused with the elite coins that bring hundreds or thousands of dollars. A normal fine or VF coin may be worth roughly $1 to $5, while an attractive AU example might fall around $3 to $15, with certified mint state pieces potentially ranging from roughly $10 to $100 or more depending on the grade. At the upper end, very high-grade certified specimens, recognized varieties, or dramatic authenticated errors can move into the hundreds, and in exceptional cases, substantially beyond that. Values in the $1,000 plus category should be regarded as exceptional rather than typical, requiring a combination of genuine rarity, outstanding grade, dramatic error characteristics, or intense collector competition. Auction records for Susan B. Anthony dollars demonstrate an important principle. The spectacular prices associated with this series are generally attached to specific varieties or extraordinary errors and finest known condition, not simply to an ordinary 1980D dollar. Registry set competition can intensify that effect because advanced collectors may compete for the highest graded example available, turning a technically small difference in grade into a major difference in price. And that brings the story back to the scratched, toned 1980D sitting quietly in a collection. Its value may be modest if it is simply a circulated example, but its story changes instantly if careful examination reveals an authentic and significant mint-made variety or dramatic error. The scratches may tell the story of circulation, while the tunning may reveal decades of storage, but neither feature automatically makes the coin rare. What matters is what happened before the coin ever left the Denver Mint, and how much of that unusual characteristic remains visible today. A professional examination can distinguish genuine die doubling from mechanical damage, a true mint mark anomaly from post-mint alteration, and a legitimate striking error from an accidental scrape. The 1980D Susan B. Anthony dollar, therefore, remains an excellent reminder of why collectors look beyond age and face value. Most examples are ordinary, but the rare combination of variety, error, survival, originality, and exceptional condition can transform a seemingly insignificant dollar into a fascinating numismatic discovery. And while this is a $1 coin, not a 10-cent silver coin, the same fundamental lesson applies across United States coin collecting. Sometimes the greatest value is hidden not in the denomination, but in the extraordinary circumstances surrounding a particular survivor. And thirdly, we are exploring the most valuable and rare 1980 Susan B. Anthony dollar with the San Francisco S. Mint mark, a fascinating second-year issue that continues to attract collectors because of its connection to one of the most recognizable modern United States dollar series. The world of United States coin collecting, where an ordinary-looking dollar can sometimes reveal an extraordinary story of American history, artistry, and numismatic value. This coin may appear familiar and relatively common, but its true appeal comes from the combination of historical importance, condition rarity, proof and circulation issues, strike quality, and the intense competition surrounding exceptional certified examples. The 1980S is especially interesting because San Francisco produced both proof and uncirculated Susan B. Anthony dollars, creating different collecting categories and opportunities for enthusiasts. For anyone fascinated by valuable United States coins, this dollar represents a tangible connection to the late 20th century and a reminder that value is often determined by much more than age alone. The story of the 1980s begins with the creation of the Susan B. Anthony dollar just 1 year earlier. The United States Mint introduced the new small-sized dollar in 1979 as an attempt to provide a practical circulating alternative to the $1 Federal Reserve note. The coin honored Susan B. Anthony, the pioneering women's suffrage activist whose decades of work became an important part of American history. The decision to place Anthony's portrait on a circulating United States coin was historically significant, making the series one of the most recognizable commemorations of a woman in American coinage. By 1980, the novelty of the new dollar had begun to fade, and public acceptance remained weaker than expected. Nevertheless, production continued at Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. The San Francisco Mint became particularly important to collectors because of its proof production and specially prepared collector issues. The 1980s, therefore, belongs to an important transitional moment when the United States was experimenting with the future of its circulating coinage, while simultaneously creating collectible versions for the numismatic community. The artistry of the 1980s Susan B. Anthony dollar is one of its most memorable features. The obverse carries Frank Gasparo's portrait of Susan B. Anthony facing right, with liberty above, in God we trust beside the portrait, and the date 1980 below. The S. Mint mark identifies San Francisco production. The reverse features an eagle descending toward the lunar surface with an olive branch in its talons, surrounded by stars, and the inscriptions United States of America, $1, and EPLUBUSUNUM. This dramatic reverse was based on the Apollo 11 mission insignia and had previously been associated with the Eisenhower dollar, giving the Susan B. Anthony dollar an unexpected connection to America's historic space program. The coin measures approximately 26.5 millimeters in diameter and weighs about 8.1 grams, with a copper-nickel clad composition over copper core. When sharply struck and preserved with original mint surfaces, the contrast between the portrait, lettering, stars, and lunar eagle can be remarkably attractive. On proof examples, specially prepared dies and polished planchets can create a mirror-like appearance that makes the design stand out dramatically. One of the most important points about the 1980s is that not every example carrying an S. Mint mark has the same market value. San Francisco produced proof coins specifically for collectors, while regular uncirculated issues were also made for collector distribution. The distinction between a proof and a business strike coin is therefore extremely important when determining value. Proof coins were struck using specially prepared dies and planchets, often producing mirrored fields and frosted design elements, while uncirculated business strikes generally display more conventional mint surfaces. A coin's survival rate also depends heavily on how it was handled after leaving the mint. Proofs that were carefully stored can remain remarkably attractive, while others may develop haze, spots, hairlines, fingerprints, or scratches. Even among coins with the same date and mint mark, the difference between an ordinary example and a superb certified specimen can be substantial. The question of rarity becomes even more fascinating when condition is considered. The 1980s is not inherently rare simply because it is from San Francisco, and ordinary examples can still be located by collectors today. What becomes scarce is a coin possessing an exceptional combination of grade, surface quality, strike, luster, and originality. Proof coins are particularly sensitive to handling because their mirrored fields can reveal even tiny hairlines and contact marks. A coin that looks brilliant to the unaided eye may receive a lower grade after professional examination because of subtle imperfections. For uncirculated pieces, collectors closely study the portrait, lettering, eagle, fields, and rims for marks and weakness. The finest grades can be surprisingly difficult to obtain because every small contact mark or flaw can prevent a coin from reaching the highest certification levels. This is why mintage figures alone cannot determine rarity. Millions of coins may have been produced, yet the number surviving in truly exceptional condition can be dramatically smaller. Collector demand is another major factor behind the most valuable 1980s Susan B. Anthony dollars. Unlike an obscure modern issue with little historical identity, this series has a recognizable story and a famous namesake. Susan B. Anthony's role in the women's suffrage movement gives the coin an important cultural dimension, while the Apollo 11-inspired reverse connects it to one of America's greatest technological achievements. Advanced collectors often pursue complete Susan B. Anthony dollar sets, seeking attractive examples from each date and mint. Registry set competition can make the highest certified grades especially desirable because collectors compete for superior ranking and the finest available specimens. A coin that is common in circulated condition can therefore become surprisingly scarce at the top of the grading scale. The strongest demand is usually concentrated on coins with outstanding eye appeal, original surfaces, exceptional strike quality, and certification from a respected grading service. When examining market value, realism is essential because the 1980s is not automatically a $1,000 coin. Ordinary examples can remain relatively affordable, while premium specimens occupy a very different market. A typical circulated or impaired example may be worth around face value to a few dollars, depending on its exact condition and whether it has collector appeal. Attractive uncirculated examples can generally command several dollars to a few tens of dollars, while higher-grade certified pieces may bring substantially more. Superb mint state coins, particularly those approaching the finest grades, can reach the hundreds of dollars when registry competition and collector demand are strong. Exceptional proof examples with top certification can also command meaningful premiums, although the exact value depends heavily on grade, designation, surface quality, and market conditions. The most dramatic prices in the Susan B. Anthony series are generally associated with unusually high certified grades, recognized varieties, or major mint errors rather than an ordinary 1980s. Consequently, a realistic collector should evaluate the specific coin rather than relying on a headline figure. Varieties and errors can add another fascinating layer to the 1980s story. Collectors examine these dollars for double die characteristics, die cracks, striking problems, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, broad strikes, and other genuine mint-made abnormalities. However, not every apparent doubling or unusual mark represents a valuable variety. True doubled dies originate during the creation of the die itself, when design elements can receive unintended additional impressions during the hubbing process. Striking errors occur later, when the prepared planchet and die interact incorrectly inside the coining press. Die cracks can develop as working dies experience repeated pressure, while off-center strikes can occur when a planchet is not correctly positioned during striking. Some unusual characteristics can also result from die preparation or mint mark application practices of the era. Distinguishing these phenomena from post-mint damage requires careful examination, and authentication becomes especially important when a supposed error appears valuable. A dramatic, unquestionably genuine error can transform an otherwise ordinary 1980s into a much more desirable collectible. The condition of the individual coin remains one of the most important determinants of value. Natural tunning can sometimes be attractive, particularly when it develops gradually and leaves the underlying surfaces original, but artificial coloration, harsh cleaning, polishing, and chemical treatment can dramatically reduce collector appeal. Proof coins deserve special care because their mirrored surfaces easily reveal fingerprints, scratches, hairlines, and improper handling. Original luster on an uncirculated example can be equally important, since bright, untouched surfaces often provide evidence that the coin has avoided significant wear and environmental damage. Collectors should resist the temptation to clean a seemingly dull coin. A coin that appears less attractive because of natural age can sometimes be more desirable than a bright coin whose surfaces have been improperly treated. Professional grading can provide an independent assessment of condition and can be particularly valuable for coins that appear to have exceptional surfaces, a major variety, or a genuine mint error. For collectors searching for the most valuable 1980s dollars, the best opportunities are often hidden in places where older collector material has remained undisturbed. Original proof sets, inherited collections, old coin albums, dealer inventories, estate collections, and long-stored mint products can all contain coins worthy of closer examination. A strong magnifying glass and good lighting can help reveal surface marks, unusual doubling, dye characteristics, and differences in strike quality, but the most important skill is learning what normal production looks like before identifying something abnormal. Coins with attractive original surfaces should be protected in inert holders and handled only by the edges. Higher value specimens should be considered for professional certification, particularly when the grade could significantly affect the market value. Comparing certified auction results and studying established numismatic references can also help collectors understand the difference between an ordinary 1980s and an exceptional example. Ultimately, the 1980s Susan B. Anthony dollar is a fascinating combination of history, artistry, technology, and collecting opportunity. It represents the second year of a groundbreaking United States dollar series, honors one of America's most important suffrage leaders, and carries a reverse design connected to the extraordinary achievement of Apollo 11. Most examples are not rare treasures worth enormous sums, and that reality makes the truly exceptional pieces even more interesting. When superior grade, original surfaces, remarkable strike quality, recognized varieties, or dramatic authenticated errors come together, a familiar dollar can become a highly sought-after numismatic prize. Its greatest lesson is that rarity is not determined by a date alone. It is created by scarcity, condition, survival, demand, and the unique history of an individual coin. For both new collectors and seasoned numismatists, the 1980s remains a captivating piece of American coinage and a reminder that extraordinary value can sometimes be hiding inside an apparently ordinary $1 coin. And fourthly, the most valuable and expensive United States ultra-rare coin does not always arrive looking beautiful, brilliant, or freshly minted. Sometimes, the coin that demands the closest examination is the one covered in grime, scarred by scratches, darkened by age, and dismissed as worthless. The 1979 D. Susan B. Anthony dollar from the United States is exactly the kind of coin that can create that mystery. Carrying the Denver D mint mark and showing the unmistakable evidence of years of circulation, this old, scratched, and very dirty dollar may appear to have little more than its $1 face value. Yet the real excitement begins when collectors ask a different question. What happened to this particular coin before it reached the pocket, drawer, collection, or forgotten container where it survived? The ordinary 1979 D is not a fortune, but an authenticated major mint error, an important dye variety, or an exceptionally unusual survivor can command premiums far beyond face value. That possibility turns an ugly-looking dollar into something worth examining under serious magnification. To understand why this coin matters, the story must return to 1979, a turbulent period in United States history. Inflation was becoming a major economic concern, energy prices were rising, interest rates were moving higher, and Americans were experiencing the effects of an economy that was increasingly difficult to predict. Against this backdrop, the United States Mint introduced a completely new circulating dollar bearing the portrait of Susan B. Anthony, a pioneering figure in the women's suffrage movement. The new coin was substantially smaller than the large Eisenhower dollar and was intended to be more convenient for everyday transactions. The choice of Anthony was historically significant because it placed a prominent American woman on a circulating United States coin at a time when the country was continuing to recognize the long struggle for voting rights. The 1979 dollar therefore represented more than a denomination change. It was an experiment in modern American coinage, an attempt to make the dollar more practical, and a lasting tribute to one of the nation's most important reformers. The Denver Mint played a major role in producing the first-year Susan B. Anthony dollar. Approximately 288 million 1979 D dollars were struck, making the issue plentiful compared with genuinely scarce United States coins. The D mint mark identifies production at Denver, while Philadelphia examples carried no mint mark during this period. San Francisco produced other versions, including proof issues. The enormous production figure is important because it establishes a crucial distinction between rarity and age. A coin does not become rare simply because it is nearly 50 years old. Millions of examples can survive for decades, especially when collectors saved large quantities of a new coin during its first year. Yet mintage is only the beginning of the story. The number of coins that survive with a specific variety, a dramatic error, exceptional surfaces, or an unusual combination of characteristics can be dramatically smaller. That is where an otherwise common 1979D begins to separate itself from the millions of ordinary examples. Now look closely at the particular coin described here, old, scratched, and very dirty. Its surface may show dark patches accumulated from years of storage, dull areas where original luster has disappeared, and scratches crossing the fields or portrait. The rims may be battered from repeated contact with other coins, while the date and lettering may appear softened by circulation. Dirt can settle around the lettering, stars, portrait details, and recessed portions of the design, creating an appearance that makes the coin seem almost abandoned. But these marks are also evidence of survival. Every scratch, stain, and darkened area represents another chapter in the coin's journey through the American economy. It may have passed through cash registers, vending machines, banks, pockets, drawers, jars, and countless hands before finally becoming a forgotten survivor. From a grading perspective, substantial scratches, corrosion, harsh environmental damage, and heavy wear normally reduce value rather than increase it. The significance comes from determining whether something underneath that damage is genuinely unusual. That is where collector psychology becomes fascinating. Coin collecting is traditionally associated with brilliant uncirculated surfaces, sharp strikes, and pristine preservation, but another segment of the hobby is captivated by coins with stories. A heavily circulated dollar can carry visual evidence of decades of use that a pristine specimen simply cannot reproduce. Collectors interested in errors, unusual survivors, exonumia, and historical objects may find an ugly coin more compelling precisely because it looks different. The emotional appeal comes from uncertainty. A brilliant coin immediately announces that it was preserved, while a battered coin leaves questions unanswered. Was it simply spent for years, or did it survive a remarkable event? Was the unusual appearance created after leaving the mint, or does a genuine mint-made anomaly exist beneath the grime? That mystery is powerful, but experienced numismatists know that the story must ultimately be supported by physical evidence. The most important evidence would be a genuine mint-made anomaly. Collectors examining a 1979D Susan B. Anthony dollar may investigate double die characteristics, die cracks, die chips, strike-through errors, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, broad strikes, missing design elements, or unusual planchet problems. A double die is created during the die-making process when a design receives unintended additional impressions, potentially producing distinct separation on letters or numerals. A die crack develops later as a working die experiences repeated striking pressure, while a strike-through can occur when foreign material comes between the die and planchet during striking. An off-center strike happens when the planchet is improperly positioned in the press. These are fundamentally different from scratches acquired after the coin entered circulation. A line across the surface is not automatically a double die, and discoloration is not automatically a composition error. The distinction between damage and a genuine mint error is exactly why careful examination and professional authentication matter when an apparently ordinary coin displays something extraordinary. The 1979 Susan B. Anthony series also contains a famous variety that collectors immediately associate with the first-year issue, the narrow rim and wide rim obverse varieties. The wide rim, often called the near-date variety, has the date positioned noticeably closer to the rim and is considerably scarcer than the common narrow rim version. This distinction is especially important when examining 1979 dollars because date placement can produce genuine collector interest. However, the existence of the famous 1979 P wide rim variety should not be used to assume that every unusual-looking 1979D date is a rare variety. The Denver issue has its own collecting characteristics, and any supposed double die, repunched feature, die anomaly, or unusual strike must be evaluated on its own evidence. This is where a dirty coin can become particularly intriguing. Grime may obscure small design details, while scratches can imitate doubling or create lines that never existed in the original die. The coin may require careful, non-destructive examination before its true identity becomes clear. The auction market adds another dimension to the story. Traditional price guides are useful for establishing ordinary market ranges, but auctions can behave differently when a genuinely scarce coin appears. A certified example with an important error can attract specialists who have spent years searching for exactly that piece. Registry-set competition can intensify bidding when collectors want the finest certified example available. Provenance can add another layer when a coin has a documented history through an important collection or recognized auction. Social media can also bring unusual coins to a much wider audience, although online attention should never be confused with authenticated rarity. A dramatic photograph of a filthy coin may generate thousands of views, but views do not establish value. Serious market value comes when knowledgeable collectors compete for a coin whose rarity and authenticity have been independently established. And now comes the question that makes this 1979D so compelling. How valuable could it actually become? An ordinary circulated 1979D Susan B. Anthony dollar is generally not a six-figure coin. Even a heavily worn example with scratches and dirt would ordinarily remain close to face value, with modest premiums possible for certain collector interests or varieties. Better preserved, uncirculated examples can bring higher prices, while exceptional certified pieces and legitimate varieties or errors can command substantially more. The important distinction is between a normal coin and an extraordinary one. A theoretical auction price of six figures for a 1979D would require circumstances far beyond ordinary wear or tunning, such as an exceptionally rare and dramatic authenticated mint error, an extraordinary provenance, or an unprecedented combination of rarity and collector competition. There is no sound basis for presenting a typical 1979D as a coin worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. A spectacular six-figure result would therefore be an extreme hypothetical scenario, not a realistic expectation for the scratched and dirty coin itself. Imagine, however, a different discovery. Suppose a seemingly worthless 1979D is found to contain a previously undocumented and unmistakable mint-made error, with a dramatic strike abnormality that occurred during production and could be conclusively authenticated. Suppose further that only a tiny number of examples were known, that the coin had remained untouched for decades, and that two major collectors urgently wanted it for important collections. In that extraordinary situation, the coin's market value would no longer be determined by its $1 denomination or by the hundreds of millions produced across the series. It would be determined by scarcity, authenticity, visual impact, provenance, and competition. Even then, a six-figure result would be an exceptional event requiring extraordinary evidence, not something that should be assumed from a dirty appearance. The most fascinating part of such a discovery would not be the headline price, but the realization that a coin dismissed as worthless had preserved evidence of an event that occurred inside the United States Mint nearly half a century earlier. There is also something important about the coin's dirt and damage that should never be overlooked. Cleaning a potentially unusual coin can destroy evidence of its originality and may reduce its desirability. A harshly cleaned surface can lose its natural character, while scratches, corrosion, and environmental staining need to be distinguished from genuine mint-made characteristics. Natural tunning can develop through long-term storage and may sometimes be attractive, but heavy environmental damage is generally detrimental. The safest approach for a potentially important coin is preservation rather than restoration. The coin should be handled by its edges, protected in an appropriate holder, and examined without polishing or chemical treatment. If an unusual feature appears convincing, professional authentication and grading can establish whether the characteristic is genuine and provide an objective assessment of condition. That process can turn speculation into evidence. The most valuable lesson hidden inside the 1979 D. Susan B. Anthony dollar is that coin collecting is not simply a search for shiny objects. It is a search for survivors, mistakes, historical evidence, and stories preserved in metal. The ordinary 1979 D is common, but the right era, variety, condition, or provenance can change the conversation completely. A scratched and dirty coin should not automatically be treated as worthless, just as an attractive coin should not automatically be treated as rare. Every unusual feature must be examined carefully and understood within the history of the mint and the coin series. The 1979 D. Susan B. Anthony dollar stands at the beginning of a remarkable chapter in United States coinage, and every surviving example carries some record of that era. So before dismissing an old dollar because it looks ugly, worn, or forgotten, look again. Beneath the dirt may be nothing more than an ordinary survivor, or there may be a genuine piece of numismatic history waiting to be recognized.